pass over to Sarah to let us know when we're going. We're going. It's appeared on the screen. So the floor is yours, James.
Thanks, Leslie. And yeah, good morning, everyone. So yeah, lovely to be with you today and just spend a little bit of time just reminding some of you and hopefully refreshing or informing those of you who aren't familiar, but the CUBO survey, benchmarking survey that's done each year, is about to go live. So hopefully you'll have received some emails from CUBO, and if not you, then certainly the lead member of your institution regarding CUBO membership should have received that, so do chase them up. But the annual CUBO survey that takes place addresses all of the core areas that I guess CUBO is sort of responsible for and in your own domains. So it looks at residences across rent, prices, delving into the differences within your sort of catered room provision, self-catered room provision, explores accommodation contracts. Actually, I'll go into the survey itself and talk through that in a bit more detail and share it. Some key dates to mention now, and I'll mention them again later on. The survey goes live next Monday, so the 21st of October, and runs through until the end of November, 28th of November. So there's about 5 weeks to compile that. I haven't been able to get everyone's institution names down and look at the current spreadsheet that we have, but on my last check this morning, we have 29 institutions that have already registered since the email came out on Friday, and we're really keen to double that. So I'm hoping after this brief conversation, you'll all rush after the meeting to get registered and get your institutions on board, because as you'll see when I share the information with you, it really does benefit from having the maximum number of people involved. So let me just share the screen and I'll talk you through it. This works. Okay, can you see a spreadsheet at the moment? Someone can just shout yes, because I can't see anyone. Yeah, brilliant. Lovely. Okay, so this is the actual spreadsheet that will be issued to each institution. Some of you will be very familiar with this, some won't. It's all delivered through OneDrive. So providing you have a Microsoft account as part of the university, which I think most universities do, then you'll have very straightforward access to this. We provide the link to everyone who registers within the institution, and obviously this is a focused group, so you're all responsible for catering by and large. I know there's a couple of people from Kent who aren't. So there's the dedicated sections towards food and drink and catering on campus. But for those other areas, we appreciate there will be different people that will hold that data and information. So each spreadsheet that is allocated towards an institution, it can have multiple people go in and populate that data. Those links are secured just to you. It's a completely anonymous survey, and we believe that, you know, by retaining that anonymity, it means people are more forthcoming in sharing that information. The more people we get, the better it is for us to actually then tailor that information down, so that you can actually get a competitor set that's more applicable to your institution. And I'll talk through that on the next screen. But as you'll see, it's a fairly straightforward spreadsheet to complete. We've updated it this year, so there's a progress checklist, so whoever's in control of populating or having oversight of this spreadsheet can actually see the different areas that have been populated and how much information is in there. And I think this is just a good summary page so that you can see the types of information we're capturing here. So as I started to say before, we capture general data around accommodation and residences in terms of rent, prices, different room types, accommodation contracts. We then also look at that at a commercial side in terms of those summer lets, hotel opportunities that some of the institutions will explore. There's a dedicated section to residence life, which has obviously been a growing area in terms of CUBO over the last few years. So we'll delve into the residence life provision for each institution. In terms of food and drink on campus and the sort of catering provision, I'll go into these sections and show you a bit more in terms of what the questions are here. But we look at the campus provision and the outlets, as well as then looking at the conference and hospitality provision. There's a separate section on convenience stores. And then we've got a dedicated area towards sport, swimming pools, soft FM, security, and then just some general questions in terms of what the future might look like. So if I skip along to food and drink, just as a working example and the types of information that we're capturing here, we are seeking to break down the different type of catering offer. So again, just listening as we went around the room for introductions, it's interesting to hear that there is a mix of in-house and outsourced institutions within this group. So there's an ability to track where the revenue sits in terms of if it's in-house, outsourced, hybrid, etc. Information around subsidies where applicable for institutions, and also then breaking down the income that's associated with hospitality, conference, and retail, so that we can really start to explore and understand how that revenue mix is generated across different institutions. We capture data around labour cost and food cost in here as well, so we can get some benchmark data towards that, as well as general FTE data, entry level pay grades for catering staff, and we do that across all the areas. So again, looking at the dashboard in its entirety, we can benchmark in terms of all of the entry level grades for frontline staff. We've got some general quality measures in terms of sustainability accreditation, etc., and sort of general comments that get populated in there. I will pause once I've done a quick run through and open up for questions. There's some historic prices that have been captured over the years on a sample of food and beverage items, often debated as to what should and shouldn't be included here. But again, I think this is more just from an indicative case of where people might sit. And again, when we start to then split this down at regional levels, it becomes a bit more apparent. You know, obviously, if there's a London or a South weighting in terms of pricing compared to an institution further away from there, we'd expect that. So we capture some general prices of products, meal subsidies, again, general comments and queries. I guess staying within catering for this, retail may or may not sort of sit within your domain, but there are some questions around convenience retail, again, salaries associated with that, whether it's an in-house outsourced provision, and just the general structure around that if you've got branded outlets included in that convenience retail. And then a couple of extra pages delving into our conference facilities. So there's a page dedicated to dedicated conference facilities if you have them, looking at the scope of that provision, what you've been brought in, standard DDR or 24-hour rates. We attach hotel information to that as well. So looking at the previous 2 years of performance. So again, we're building up a bigger picture for the sector in terms of our conference and events and hotel businesses coming back. And then if you don't have that dedicated facility, or if you've got both, we've got a non-dedicated section as well that also looks at what that offer is, what recent performance looks like, etc. So they're the questions that go in to the survey. What that then kicks out, if you have participated, is the dashboard. And this is where I think the real power and benefit happens here. Each participating institution will then receive essentially a Power BI dashboard dedicated to your institution. I know this says University of Birmingham up here. It's not true data that we've got, but this is just an example that we created a couple of years ago for this. So each institution gets the dashboard. So everything that has been asked is built into this dashboard. So it's quite large, but again, you might only look at some information. You might have a colleague who looks at other elements of it. But the way it's structured is your score is then compared against the average of the respondents. So you get an immediate benchmark across all participating institutions, but then we have the ability to build in filters so that it can become more bespoke to yourself. So last year, with the number of respondents that we had, we could itemize the sample mix down to core regions that the institutions were in, and then also turnover size. Sorry, that was 2 years ago. Last year, we were able to build that in terms of whether you were Russell Group or not. And what we're hoping to do is if we can maximize and we can really drive participation in this, we should be able to build in another lever again this year. So we ask for general indications, as I said, sort of size of institution, locality in terms of regions, whether you're Russell Group, post 92, etc., and also campus type. So whether you're a single campus, multiple campus, city, rural, etc. And these are the types of filters that we know if we've got the critical mass in terms of data, we can put those levers in. There'll still be a degree of anonymity because we will make sure there's always at least 3 institutions within any sort of drill down level of filtering, so that you're safe that your data is anonymous, but equally you're confident that what you're comparing against is as close to your institution as possible, if that makes sense. So the dashboard will present against the average of all participants or your filtered participants. And again, in terms of how it appears, you think back to how you're putting the questions in here. We've done it all in graphs that can be exported out, so you can add them into your own reports, presentations, etc. In terms of sort of where you sit against your benchmark for that. So every single tab has at least 1, if not 2 pages dedicated to it. Same, in terms of food and drink prices. We've done a bit of work on the presentation of this, but again, you'll certainly see the standard approach moving forwards in terms of, if you're a £1.70 bottle of Coke compared to the national average of £1.68, you can use what you can make sense of that as is relevant to your institution. So I'm going to stop sharing because I'm not being able to see anyone, so I don't know if there's been any questions. But that's it in a nutshell. So as I say, the survey goes live on Monday with 5 weeks to populate it. The more people we get, the more bespoke the dashboard becomes to you. But I know those that have used it previously, that ability to sort of whittle down and have a more representative sample is really important. And I know with all the clients we work with, whenever we do any sort of benchmarking or sort of market analysis, you want to try and compare your apples to apples as much as possible, don't you? So, but yeah, happy to answer any questions, queries. I can go back in to either of those documents if needs be. So.
Any questions from around the room at all?
Something's just come up in the chat. Let's have a look.
Karen's just asked for someone to resend the link.
Yeah, that's fine.
We've got a question as well from Marcus.
Second, just
Thanks, Leslie. James, we did this for the first time last year, and the data that came out when we got it was really, really useful. I think some learnings from us. I think we might have incorrectly inputted some of the data as we were going along, and it was potentially to do with the wording of some of the questions. One thing I did want to ask, what we noticed when we got our data through, and it took quite a while for yourselves to rectify it, was on the screen where you put the one where you've put in your income. So we would type in the income. Say, for example, you're putting in your total income, and for argument's sake, it's 500,000.
Yep.
When I typed that in, it obviously didn't pull through. So basically, when I got our report, our income said 0. And I wondered whether that was a bug. It was almost, I couldn't expand the cell in Excel. So when I typed it in, it was obviously too long. It just came up with lots of hashes, lots of hashtags. Okay. I don't know whether that was a bug on our part or anyone else noticed that. It got rectified, but it took quite a while to get it rectified, because obviously you had to go back in and then, obviously redo all the data. But there was a couple of kind of buggy things which I noticed in the spreadsheets as we moved along.
Yeah, no, it's a fair comment. Thank you for the feedback, Marcus. So what we've done this year, we've gone back through and readdressed questions where there's any ambiguity. We've put additional notes under the questions to really try and resolve that. And our developer has put additional data validation into the cells so that it's restricting to what you can put in, because there were some sort of anomalies in terms of what some people were putting in. There's no, this is not in response to what you were saying, Marcus, but where we might have said put it into the nearest whole pound, people were still putting in commas or decimal points. Okay. So we've tried to take out the risk of error as much as we can this year. And what I guess one of the big things that we're really trying to focus on is, we know this information is, depending on when you get it, depends on how useful it is. So we've really tried to bring this forward to the earliest point that we can, in terms of, a lot of the data is dependent on how it lands as of October. So we're doing it at the back end of October. So especially with residential rate occupancy and things like that, we're doing it at the earliest opportunity. We're working on the principle that these dashboards come out to you at the very start of 2025, so that you've got time to actually utilize some of that information in some of your strategic decision making for the next academic year. And we're really mindful that if you only get it, in sort of March or April, most of that hard work has already been done. So we're hoping that you get the information sooner. We finish the survey on the 28th of November, and we're then using that run up to Christmas as our data validation phase, on the assumption that the questions are black and white. The cell validation is tighter. There should be less of it, but it means that we can really hit the ground running in terms of, as soon as those surveys are in, if there is any anomaly, we're getting back to you in a timely manner, so that you've got time before Christmas to respond to that. And then we do our dashboard development early January, and that gets kicked back out to you. So hopefully that will address any of those little errors, bugbears, and where they do occur, we've got time built in to be able to rectify that.
Thanks, James. Yeah, that's really useful. I think an obvious one for me was income from hospitality. Everybody understands hospitality to be different things, and at ours it's slightly different to what others see. And as I read through that one, I was like, I wonder whether they mean delivered, and then it says events, and the split between university events and a conference which may be hosted by the university. So it's obviously just us understanding when we put the data in, what we're putting in and what we understand it to be. No,
Sure.
that's really useful. Thanks for that.
No problem.
So just to clarify then, James, we're saying it goes live next Monday. A couple of people have just queried if they want to register their interest, how do they do that?
So an email went out to, it was all the lead members, wasn't it, Sarah? Sarah, I don't know, because you've got all the contact details here. If you can you forward that email on to everyone who's involved today?
Yep. Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll just do that as a blanket email back to everyone. And it's a very simple form. It's a Google form for you to populate. It will ask you, as well as your name, role, email, it will ask you which areas you will take responsibility for filling in. And I'd urge you, if you happen to be the individual who's doing this for the first time for your institution, do please send that email with a link on to anyone else who you think is relevant outside of your domain. If you're not responsible for sport, soft FM, accommodation, etc., but you know who is, then cascade it out, because again, the more each institution completes the overall survey, again, the better the data is as well. So.
And in terms of troubleshooting, if people are having any queries or problems along the way, is there a key contact that comes out with the link to feedback to?
So the email that Sarah will be forwarding on, it has a link to the FAQ page, and if anything does come out that for whatever reason hasn't been addressed, then that will get populated sort of as we go through that process as well. And there's also then an email to our support team at Russell Partnership, and that essentially will then come back to me, and I'll be sort of personally focused on this. But again, please feel free to contact me directly.
Thank you.
As well.
Marcus,
sorry, Leslie, just sorry for hogging it, but those who signed up last time, so my sport colleagues, accommodation colleagues, if they signed up last time, do they need to then re-register again?
The official answer is yes, please.
Okay.
The only reason being, we're trying to get clarity on who does what. So we got lots of names, but we didn't necessarily know who was doing which section. And again, sort of between ourselves and the CUBO team, we're going to pester. I think it's probably the fair bit, but no, we just want to be really proactive in checking and making sure that we can target the right people. That Marcus, if you've done all of your bits, but your sport colleague hasn't, that we're not chasing you, we're chasing someone else. If that makes sense. So, but those who have been involved before, will be able to access the spreadsheet. The dashboard and the spreadsheets when they come out. So.
And apologies if this is in your FAQs, but if people register, fill it out, look at the dashboard, think it's brilliant, if there's a metric there that they would like to see that isn't already included, are you open to feedback? Or
certainly open to feedback. It's not something that we can change or build into this year, but if there is something that comes out and you think, well, we really need to know this, then yeah, absolutely, and that's something that we can then go back and discuss with the CUBO board next year in terms of future developments. But yeah, at the end of the day, it's got to work, and it's got to be valuable. We've gone round the houses quite a few times over the years in terms of what people want in, what they want out. It was getting to be quite a beast. I think for one individual to do, there's quite a lot to put in, but normally it's 3 or 4 people that do their different elements, and that seems to work really well. And yeah, there's nuances across all of your institutions, aren't there? And sort of what's important to one might not be as important to another. But any feedback is always really useful.
Lovely, thank you. Before we let James go, has anybody got any fun questions or comments? No? Thank you very much, James.
Fantastic. Good. Well, yeah, I hope you all do take part.